This is day one of the Regulators and Policymakers Retreat in Goa, organized by IPPAI. And I have the pleasure of introducing to you Mr. Sumant Sinha, who is the Chairman and CEO of Renew Power Ventures. Welcome to the retreat, Mr. Sinha.
Thank you.
So we'd like to know, uh, people often accuse renewable energy of being overpriced, and the fact that the consumer feels that he can't pay for say something like 9 or 10 rupees a unit when he wants to pay something like 3 or 4 rupees per unit in the household. How do you see this conflict panning out, and how can renewable energy be made more affordable?
Well, I think there are a couple of things we should keep in mind. First of all, as you know, India is a power deficit country. So I think renewables forms a very important part of bridging the gap. Renewable is still pretty small in India. It accounts for less than about 3 to 4% of the overall power production in the country, but it is growing. And because there is no fuel risk involved with renewable energy, therefore the issues around coal supply, gas supply, all of those are something that don't come up. So to that extent, it's a very good source of power to have for the country as a whole. That is number one. Number two is when you talk about the cost of production of wind, for example, wind is only at about 4 rupees, 4 rupees 50 paisa. So it's not at all that expensive. Now, if you look at where coal production costs in India are right now, they are very close to those levels. They're at about 3 rupees 50, 4 rupees. So it's not really that far in terms of, and the coal costs are going up as digging for coal becomes a little bit harder. Coal gets harder to reach, and so therefore what is going to happen is over a period of time, while wind costs will remain flat, coal costs will keep going up, gas costs will keep going up, and within a couple of years you'll find that renewable energy actually, particularly wind, is competitive with actual fossil fuel based supplies. If you look at solar on the other hand, solar is currently at about 8 or 9 rupees. So it is in fact expensive. However, the more we invest in solar, the more that cost will go down as well. And so over time, you will have a convergence happening between the normal gas and coal going up, wind staying pretty stable, and solar coming down. So it is highly conceivable that 3 or 4 years from now, you will find that all of these three sources of power have converged, with renewable energy being totally domestic, requiring no fuel supply at all, and therefore being a very good hedge against any increasing fuel costs going forward. And so that is the time when I think renewable energy will really find its place in the sun. No pun intended.
Good one, sir. So, the government of India is trying to incentivize this whole process by coming out with renewable purchase obligations, where consumers like distribution companies or large consumers have to mandatorily buy a certain percentage of meet a certain percentage of their energy requirements through renewable energy. But there are state regulatory commission in states that have not enforced this on a basis on a penal basis. As in, if a consumer consumes conventional energy, he's still not penalized for not consuming renewable energy. What is your take on that?
You know, the first answer that I gave was all about how to bridge the energy gap at an affordable price. There is another aspect to our energy consumption, and that really is something which is much beyond us. It pertains to the environment. It pertains to how we view our usage of natural resources and what we intend to leave behind for our future generations. And that is where I think renewable provides a totally different aspect, which is that because it is environmentally sound and friendly, therefore, as an obligation towards our future generations, towards our children, we do have a duty to try to maximize the amount of renewable energy that we generate. Having said that, India is also not a very rich country, and we do believe fairly so that we should be able to consume a fair amount of coal and all of these sources of fuel before we can get into renewables. Having said that, the government has decided that based on the National Action Plan for Climate Change that the Prime Minister had enunciated a few years ago, that renewable energy should form 15%, no more than that, of our total energy mix by the year 2020. Now, to reach those standards, the government has also said that every state should try to set its own internal targets and get us holistically to that number. Now, as that to actually action those things, what is happening essentially is that all state regulators are trying to put in place these RPOs, the renewable purchase obligations. And to my mind, that's actually very important because we do have an obligation to making sure that we do grow in as environmentally friendly a way as possible, particularly when I couple that answer with answer one, which is that the costs are also not that much higher, right? So these RPOs need to be enforced. As they start getting enforced, you will start having more and more renewable energy coming into the mix. So to me, that's a very essential ingredient for the growth of renewable energy as well going forward.
Finally, sir, what would be your message to investors who want to invest in the renewable energy space? Is it a place where they can look forward to sustained returns over the next few years?
Well, the Indian power sector as a whole, as you know very well, is going through a lot of turbulence right now. Quite apart from fuel supply issue in the conventional space, there are issues about state discom financial health. There's a question about banks' lending appetite. There's a lot of regulatory change that is taking place. And because power is a sector that is a concurrent sector, therefore, it is the states ultimately that have to define their own regulations within the ambit of the overall guidelines coming from the center, and that makes it for a very complicated environment. So if you ask me honestly, I think at a very macro level, because India's power deficit, therefore there should be opportunities. However, you need to be able to make sure that you have a really good understanding of the sector and a really good idea to be able to navigate through all the issues that are there in the sector. And if you feel that you can do that, then by all means, I think we should welcome any foreign investment that we can get.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for your time.
Thank you.